Hey, everybody. Here we are, the DPB Roadshow, on the road again with DPB. It's good to be with you today. Obviously, sometimes you find yourself in other states doing the DPB show. Sometimes you take the DPB show down the highway at 70 miles per hour. It's good to be with you today. Once again, don't forget, early voting has started. We need everyone to show up at the polls. ASAP. ASAP. I don't know how to impress upon you that if you're not at the polls by October 10th, we will be in a situation where they're going to be able to front load on vote by mail ballots, early voting ballots. So we need you to get there. Uh, Once again, share this with everybody. Take as many people as you can uh, to the polling place. Give them a ride. If they have requested a ballot, there's a certain way you can go through the process of hand delivering their ballot to an election authority. So there's a lot of options. If you have any questions ever about anything as it pertains to the electoral process or voting process, I'm not an expert, but I know a lot of experts. And I feel like I'm learning more and more each passing day, each passing election cycle, because I've been so involved in this process of not only turning our state red, but turning our country back to a manner of common sense. And we've lost that. But I will tell you, I'm super excited about today, especially the show, because we've got the one of the best guest hosts that I've had for a while. And yes, I'm talking not only talking about Ryan McKenzie, he's going to be with us, but we have Kevin Phares joining us today. Many of you might know Kevin Phares was on the radio, Cities 92.9 out of Bloomington Normal, as he was attending Illinois State University. He's very involved with Turning Point USA. He went off to college again to work on a law degree. That's where he currently finds himself at Liberty University. Uh, Kevin is dynamic, and in order to do a full breakdown on what transpired the other night, I think we need the expertise of a Kevin Phares, because Kevin Phares is in law school. Now we can't call him a law expert yet, but he's going to have a lot of insight about JD Vance. Ryan has been actively working since Tuesday, pulling up some clips. We might be able to get to those, we might not, but we're gonna have a lively conversation. So let's go ahead and bring them on, Mrs. Producer. There they are. The
Hey,
man, the myth, the
Howdy,
legend,
howdy.
Kevin Phares. It's good to see you. Ryan McKenzie, it's always good to have you on the DPP
Absolutely.
show.
It is great to be here, DPB. I appreciate the invite, and I'm happy we could make it happen.
Well, Kevin, obviously, so much is going on. You're at law school. You're trying to navigate what that's like. I can't even imagine. Give the audience a little bit of an idea. Yeah, I'm sure you had an expectation of what it would be like to be in law school, but tell them what you really have learned since you hit the first semester here in law school.
Yeah, well, to really break down, I could go hours and hours and hours about things that I've learned so far, and to the average person, they probably wouldn't even seem all that entertaining. But law school is this kind of this enigma, this thing that exists in the ether to a lot of people, where it's just like, oh man, that must be really hard. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. But to somebody who really does have an interest and a fascination with the law and understanding what that truly means, it's truly and it truly can be embodied by the statement that everybody says: if you're doing something you love, you never are going to have to work a day in your life. Because I read thousands of pages. I've been here for 7 weeks now. I've probably read upwards of 6,000 pages on the law, dozens and dozens of cases that have been all the way back to the 1700s, if not even earlier, all the way up to cases that were just decided by the Supreme Court in the last cycle. So I learned so much. I read so much. But the thing that's fascinating is I'm doing it at a university unlike any other. I'm out here in Lynchburg, Virginia, at Liberty University School of Law. And for any of you who don't know about Liberty University, it's not like your traditional secular University. Even other schools that claim to be Christian aren't Christian like this. I take one class, it's called the Foundations of Law. In that class, I learn about the foundations of law all the way back to biblical times. We cite the Bible in that class. We learn about the law God put unto the Israelites and how it applies to our law today. Today, in that class, actually, just today, I got into a lively debate with students regarding whether or not women should be serving in combat in our military based on biblical law. We were citing things such as Numbers. When God commanded the Israelites, he said, take a registry of your men, all of whom are above the age of 20, and that will be your military. That will be your army. Now, does that apply to America? Does it apply to modern day 2024? How do we know? What is the law of nature? What is the law of God? And how do we apply it to today's world? And that's truly what Liberty University is all about, is what does God say? And how do we apply that to our law, which is unlike anything you'll get? What are the foundations of law at every other university? They're going to go back to Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli. They're going to have these lively debates about all these traditional government-based philosophers. But truly, who do they answer to? Who do they answer to? Do they answer to themselves? To some extent, sure. But no, ultimately, they answer to the Lord above. And so when we talk about judgment and law and everything, I know that's a very long-winded answer, but like I said, I could go on hours.
No. I'm enthralled. I mean, this could be the speechless without the DPB, because that stuff fascinates me. Obviously, my producers over here, my wife, beautiful wife, Tanya, she just feels like such a proud ISU blow-no mom, because we somewhat adopted Kevin when he came to be who he is. Not that we had anything to do with that. I mean, we're just sitting back enjoying the ride. But Kevin, you said something the other day when we spoke on the phone, that being in law school, that lawyers speak differently. They have a lexicon that's different than the way that most Americans speak. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it depends on who you're talking to. A lawyer, there's this thing that people talk about. It's called code switching, and your way of based on who you're talking to, the group of people you're talking to, you're going to speak to them differently, and everybody does it. A doctor is going to speak to a doctor differently than he'll talk to a patient, just as much as you might talk to a Christian differently than you'll talk to an atheist, or a conservative different than a liberal. A lawyer does something very similar, but I'm just noticing it a lot more now because I'm surrounded by, if not law students, then lawyers themselves through my professors. And so I notice when the way that it's not just the words, it's also the way in which people that study law frame sentences. Oftentimes, you'll notice they frame saying things such as the conclusion of what they're going to say, their explanation of it, and then the conclusion following. And I noticed that a lot, and I broke it down a little bit with how J.D. Vance performed in the.
See, you stole my thunder. I was just going to say that, Kevin. So let's go ahead and go right into the other exact. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
The segue into JD. You've got it. So, this could be the best DPB show with the co-host Kevin Phares, and then I'll never have to work another day in my life. Go ahead.
Well, that's exactly, and it's not just that. There's a lot of different ways. You'll notice even the slightest things. Every word that a lawyer speaks has purpose to it. You're going to have. I mean, even I've noticed during the debate the other night against J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz. Now, the moderators would constantly call Tim Walz. They'd say, "Excuse me, Governor Walz." They'd say Governor Walz or Governor.
Yes.
As if you notice, every time that J.D. Vance referenced Tim Walz, he said Tim. Now, there's multiple things that this does. First off, it makes it seem colloquial. It makes him seem friendly. A lot of complaints people have that the media has been trying to portray J.D. Vance as somewhat unlikable, unapproachable, unfriendly. Well, when he says Tim, Yeah, weird. When he says Tim, it makes him seem friendly. It makes him seem like he's talking to him on the couch, like he's the kind of guy you're having a beer with. So there's that. Secondly, it also subliminally hits on the viewer that he doesn't have a leadership position, that Tim Walz doesn't actually have any authority. Because if you recognize somebody's authority, you would call them Governor Walz. You would say governor. You'd say the current governor. No, all of that is out the window. In this instance, he's just Tim. And if you noticed, Tim would respond with what the senator doesn't want you to know, what the senator is saying, what the senator, even when Tim Walz would call J.D. Vance a liar, he would say, Senator.
Yep.
Senator. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I picked up on that. In fact, I was sharing that with I can't remember who it was, just earlier today or yesterday, that he never referred to Tim as governor. Now, I just came from Minnesota, and he did talk a lot about being the Minnesota governor, but J.D. Vance never edified him being the governor of Minnesota. But it was a big part of what Tim wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
I'm here. Sorry, my roommate was stepping out real quick, and I'm in like our little public common area. So I'm still a student.
Yep.
Don't mind. We're just doing the DPB show here. Just don't mind. Anybody can interrupt at any time. But no, I think it's fascinating that you pointed that out, though. That JD calculated as he is as an attorney, and I wanted you to speak a little bit today, because not only about the debate, I think there's a lot of points that are made. Obviously, there's a media blackout right now. They did not score any points the other night. They had really nothing to lean into other than they believe they've got the golden calf in J6. Here we go. Dust it off. Bring it back out. We're going to J.D. Vance would not say that Trump did not win the election, or Trump, whatever they're trying to make that out to be. It's fascinating. That's all they came away with, which means they have nothing, which means that we're not going to see any more about the debate going forward here for the next 32 days.
Well, it's because they're also trying to cover up the statements made by Tim Walz, and I'll be honest. I believe they're more Freudian slips. They're mistakes rather than intentional. But he said things like, "I befriended school shooters."
Yeah.
What does that mean, Tim?
Yeah, you can't make those kinds of mistakes and not think that's going to run with it.
Yeah.
Or when asked about the Tiananmen Square, and there are multiple documented instances in which he lied and said he was in Tiananmen Square when the protests were happening.
Yeah.
And he says he misspoke.
That's a big misspoke.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, it was so.
I was in Tiananmen Square when it happened. And you say that on a radio show, on the campaign trail, in a lot of instances. Oh, sorry, I just misspoke. No, that's just like, what about? I'll admit, saying you befriended school shooters, one time, maybe a misspeak.
Sure. Yeah.
Straight up lying about your combat record, about attending Tiananmen Square's protests in China.
Yeah.
Sorry, not a misspeak.
Yeah.
Well,
he learned a lot how to govern now from it.
Yeah. That was the most uncomfortable part about the debate, was watching him just sit there, and the clock was ticking, and he wasn't saying anything. He says, "Well, I guess I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like I said, I misspoke. I'm a knucklehead.
Yeah, he tried to come off as this. Oops, shucks. That's just the way I misspoke. That Midwestern. I didn't mean to. It wasn't really all that great to kind of portray himself as that, but J.D. Vance did a really good job of making him kind of misspeak on the stage as what he was trying to correct, because he couldn't answer what J.D. was throwing at him.
Absolutely. J.D. wiped the floor with him. I knew he would, which was really interesting, because if you look at, you can bet on politics. There was I forgot exactly the website. I think it's Polywatch or something like that. It tracks the betting of the odds and everything. Yeah, Polymarket, that's it. And you can track the betting. And Walz was actually favored to win it. I think those numbers basically came from the fact that even most Trump supporters recognized Kamala exceeded low expectations at the initial debate. And so people thought that Tim Walz might do the same. As the debate went on, you just saw it going. He had like a plus 70 prediction at the beginning, and then it went all the way out. He was like at like 39% favorability, if not even lower than that by the end of the debate. It was just tanking and tanking and tanking. And I could have told you from the beginning, I should have put my life savings, because I knew, as somebody who has just started law school, I saw it. I could have put all my debt. I put all my debt on JD Vance, because I knew when you go to law school, you learn not just how to talk. You don't just learn how to talk. You don't just learn the difference between abandoned, mislaid, and lost property. You don't just learn all that. No, what you learn is you learn how to think through things analytically very quickly. And that's why you notice things like David said. I'm not sure I think it was before the show even started. He was saying how Tim Walz had to read and write down everything. No, a good lawyer will write things down and will reference notes. But in a debate such as that, in which you only have to respond for 2 minutes, you don't need to be taking a lot of time to write down and read notes and everything like that. A lawyer knows how to respond fairly quickly and can think through things at the drop of a hat, because it's practice. Practice makes perfect.
Right.
And you use visualization. I'm sure that JD Vance has basically rehearsed most of the arguments that come from the left, most of the substance that the left tries to bring out, just passing a Harris for President sign on Interstate I-74 between Galesburg and Peoria. That'll be the last one we seen. In fact, that was the only Harris for President sign that I saw all the way to Minnesota. And there were plenty of Harris for President signs in Minnesota, but they weren't even close to numbering the Trump-Pence sign, or Trump. I'm sorry. Talk about a slip of the tongue. I'm sorry. Trump.
I will say, if you want to use your old Trump merchandise from when he was with Pence, and you don't want to spend any money on new ones, all you got to change 2 letters.
Yeah.
VA.
There you go.
VE to VA makes Pence to Vance real quick, real easy. So.
Some people had those up at the RNC convention. You could tell they were prepared.
Low budget. There you go.
Why they widened it out and put Vance's name in? But the point you make, Kevin, about being on your feet, talking, obviously you, Ryan, myself, we've had to learn to do that, and we're still learning, and you're going to be even well ahead of the curve when it comes to podcasting and talking, because of your ability to learn that logical response, the sequential way of presenting an argument, defining your opponent, obviously not dehumanizing him, which is what JD did a masterful job of not. He complimented Tim. He said, Tim and I probably agree that there's a need for this. We just don't agree on what the solution is,
and
which is masterful.
Yeah.
That's masterful. Yeah. But the one part, and I want you to get your opinion on this, Ryan and Kevin, is JD's ability to take illegal immigration and what currently is on the books, federal law, and how Kamala has been able to do a end run on illegal immigration. That's what we heard right away in Springfield, Ohio. Well, those Haitians are really imports. They're not illegal immigrants, because we made a way so that they could apply for an accelerated status of citizenship, which really doesn't make them a citizen. But go ahead.
Yeah, so the app that he was referencing, it's a CPB One app or whatever it was. It's a legal way of turning illegals temporarily legal, I guess. It's a legal way of keeping them illegal. But they tried to argue with him is that they're not really here illegally. Yes, they are. There's 20 million of them here, and even the numbers speak them out. So I'm not sure how they couldn't fact check Tim Walz on the fact that the numbers have not gone down. They've gone up drastically. But the JD Vance's way of kind of twisting that into, there's no way how you can change that. They're here illegally. Whether you import them or not, you're flying them overnight, then they're not deemed illegal when you're flying them into the country by yourself. I don't know. I think JD did a really good job of twisting that argument around because they tried to pin it on, oh, look at the numbers. They're going down.
Absolutely.
Kevin, I've got to hear your opinion of that.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the immigration, I think what JD Vance did a very good job of is tying a lot back to it. I mean, I think he could have even done more. A lot of times when he would be, there'd be other things they would talk about January 6th, and he'd constantly go back and he'd be like, "You want to talk about that? What about the countless people that have been abused, murdered? What about our taxpayer dollars going to?" He was able to tie so many issues back to the issue of immigration because it truly is where it's coming. And I think he could have even done more. One issue, and you might have wanted to talk about this later, David, but I think that it's worth bringing up now when it comes to the immigration issue, is abortion. I thought JD Vance did a really good job of saying kind of the quiet part out loud, but in necessary ways. He came out and he said, "Look, it's no secret that Republicans have had an issue with this issue, and the fact that our messaging doesn't always necessarily come from a place of compassion, and that it can make us seem a lot more hateful than it truly is when you look at it." And I think it would have been a perfect time for him because Tim Walz came out of the gate and said, "No, this is because you guys hate women." He said, "It's all about women. It's all about women." Okay, well, Tim, if you really care about women so much, then what about Laken Riley or Rachel Murrin or there's tons of others that have been raped, murdered, trafficked through our southern border. And so if you want to talk about women, we can have the conversation about abortion also, by the way, and this is an aside, but a tangent we're having is that Tim Walz brought up the example of a woman from, I believe it was Georgia.
Yeah, he named specific names that had issues with abortion.
He said this specific name. Actually, the interesting part about that case is he said that she died due to the fact that she couldn't receive abortion care. No, the fact is she actually went to another state.
Yes.
She went to another state, purchased mifepristone, which is the abortion drug, went back to her state, consumed the pill, had an abortion, and then due to a defect with the pill, due to complications with the pill, the unborn child that has now been murdered due to the pill had issues coming out. She had sepsis and then died as a result of the sepsis from having an abortion.
Right. So Crowder talked about that on his show. It was the case. She went to North Carolina, was late for her appointment when she went to North Carolina, just a couple hours away. It wasn't like states away like Tim Walz and the left make it out to be, where these women are going across state lines. She was a couple hours away and she was late to her appointment, couldn't get into the appointment. And then she went back and had their problems when she did. So she took the pill. So she's having complications from a pill that will tell you that it has these complications. So abortion pills will have more complications than just causing abortions.
Well, the point of what I was saying too is it's not simply. It doesn't even matter whether or not she had to drive states away or anything like that. They totally negate the entire idea of the 10th Amendment. But with that, it's the issue of Tim Walz coming out and saying, "Oh, she died due to a lack of abortion care." That's incredibly reductive of the entire story and does not tell the American people that she actually died as a result from having a legal abortion. But nobody wants to have that conversation.
This is leading to a point that I wanted to get across today, because we know factually that less than 1% of deaths, are due through this process to what we're referencing right now. This isn't something that happens all the time. It's not half of them, 25% of them. It's less than 1%. Just like the whole rape issue, incest issue. They make that to be their base argument. Like, this is happening all the time. 12-year-olds are getting impregnated by a family member, which is a crime, and we all acknowledge that. It's a heinous, terrible crime. And they never talk about the crime, the abuser. Those young girls were abused. They never talk about the fact that the amount of abortions or the amount of anything, really. They never talk about substance on anything that deals with the majority of the women who are seeking to have abortions. In most cases, are usually utilizing it as a form of birth control. But they don't want to talk about that. They brought that up in the gun violence thing. Once again, they, of course, according to Tim, gun violence is the gun. It's pretty simple.
The gun.
Simple.
Yeah.
Well, and that was another. That was another time that I thought that J.D. Vance totally missed an opportunity. And I mean, he did a great job of turning it and discussing the idea that a lot of people illegally obtain guns. But are we not going to talk about, I actually have it right over here. We're not going to talk about that in this election cycle alone. We have had 2 assassination attempts against the president.
Yeah.
We've had 2 assassination attempts. Not a single time. Not a single time. We have had 2 assassination attempts. It's insane. That's insane. And we don't want, but that's not going to come up during gun violence.
Yeah.
You're reading my notes. I think Crowder did a great job of doing how Crowder does it. I do like it. I know you kind of turned me on to him, Kevin, about listening to Crowder as he's breaking it down. He dealt with a lot of those points, so I encourage people, go out there, listen to Steven Crowder's take on the debate. But you're never going to hear anything more about the assassination attempts. You're not going to hear anything about the vice president debate. It's going to be gone because they are running so desperately now to find something. And I get it. Half the people in the United States are oblivious to anything we're talking about on Speechless, the Ryan Mack Show, the DPB show. It's all a fog to them because they've lived in this bubble of what ABC, CBS, MSNBC have been feeding into their minds. They've become, I did a show on this, The Walking Dead. They are mindless. This is what they refer to as useful idiots at times. And I've heard other people, and I don't like to call anybody an idiot. It's funny because, you run into these people and you're like, wait a minute, they appear normal. They really do. And I believe that dehumanizing people, it's so easy to get caught up into the language that isn't productive. People can be saved. People can be redeemed. And I think you're right, Kevin. We need to take an approach that a person who makes a decision to terminate a pregnancy, basically kill another human being, is not in their right mind. And unfortunately, most of that will manifest itself into the future. And you talk about haunting. Can you imagine making a decision? And I know this was discussed. They were on J.D. Vance because he believed in a federal, if he was going to put a time frame on not being able to, kill babies in the womb after 15 weeks. 15 weeks? I don't know. My math, if I do my math, isn't that 4 months? But this isn't even 4 months anymore. It's beyond that. And that's to live with that you have taken and removed another human, because we see them. We see them because we all are those people. We are all babies at one time. None of us got to where we're at without going through the uterus.
You're absolutely right. And even with that, I think an important concept to consider too when it comes to the debate and the topic of abortion is even zoom out a little bit. Outside of simply the topic of abortion, let's go to the topic itself and where it was situated in the debate and how long it was. So if you watch the debate from start to finish, you're probably not like most people. I'm going to let you guys in on a little media secret. Usually in most shows, whether that's on TV, podcasting, anywhere, if you are doing it live, if it is a live event such as this one or the debate.
We'll do it live. Go ahead.
Most of the time, your viewership peaks somewhere in the middle, somewhere near like the middle of the entire broadcast, because near the beginning, maybe people are doing other things. They don't realize it's happening. And then they get a notification and then they tune in somewhere in the middle. And then by the end, they found something else to do. So they're doing something else. Okay. Well, if you watch the debate, near the beginning is when they talk about the economy, the issue that most people are actually caring about. They talked about it for a very, very brief amount of time. Well, what did they talk about in the middle? For almost, if you calculate it, almost double the amount of time compared to the issue of the economy. They talked about the abortion issue smack dab in the middle of the debate. Why? Because they know that's the one that is more likely to sway voters towards the side of the Democrats. Because if they can frame enough Republicans as women haters, sexists that are trying to take your pseudo right away, to murder your child with it while inside the womb, then it doesn't matter whether or not JD Vance won on the economy or if he won on the issue of immigration. Because if they were able to get the peak amount of viewers watching at the time of abortion, then that's all that matters. That's what's going to sway the vote.
Well, and isn't that what they call programming? I mean, that whole debate, and somebody said it best, why do Republicans even enter into that arena? Because we know that they're only fishing for an opportunity, as Bongino says, snapshots and sound bites. Snapshots and sound bites. That's what campaigns are. And they have orchestrated the entire questioning of the way they presented their arguments or presented their questions, and of course quickly mentioned we've got to move on because we got a lot to accomplish here. Well, we know exactly what the script is, and we haven't been able to get one of these questions to land yet, so we got to get to the points where we know we're going to land, because as you said, Kevin, they were never going to talk about the fact that they have gone after election interference after not only a president, a sitting president, where they attack after attack, whether it's Russia collusion, whether it's the PP hoax, whether it's the Steele dossier, whether it's impeachment 1, whether it's impeachment 2, whether it's the indictment 1, indictment 2, 97 indictments, 94 indictments. Guy's 77 years old, had never been indicted before, but suddenly now we're going to indict him 90 something times, and then that didn't work, so now we're going to just, we're not going to kill him. The fact that the guy whether it's part of a greater plan, I don't know. It stinks to me all the way around. But everything is programmed. Everything that they do is programmed. They don't let up. They keep hitting the accelerator. How do you see this thing rolling out over the next 33 days, Kevin?
Man, I anticipate there's going to be a lot of things that come out. I know that this dock workers strike very well might impact the way that certain people think about this upcoming election. It's to some extent an October surprise. I think that even somebody might have said that in the comments. Well, yeah, Katrina had said that. Kat, my God, that's a new last name. Congratulations, by the way. I haven't had a chance to talk to you, but I hope you're doing phenomenal, and I wish you and Brian very, very well. But after that aside, in the next 30 days, I anticipate a lot more chaos through the media. I think that it will be. I mean, if you've been watching Sunday Night Football, you might have been inundated with Kamala ads that basically just take sound bites, just as you were saying, David. It basically just takes sound bites from the debate. All of her scripted moments that she had practiced time and time again so that she could make these advertisements, all of these advertisements that they're trying to play over the years of far left propaganda that she used to spread. I mean, even with and so if you go on Twitter, you'll be able to see videos like one from 2019 where Kamala says that she wants to prioritize Black and brown individuals for hurricane relief and for FEMA relief. Over people of other descendants. You'll miss the videos if you're not on Twitter. You'll miss the videos of Kamala saying that 18 to 25-year-olds are stupid. Yeah. If you're not on Twitter, you might miss the clips of Kamala saying or basically getting called out on the fact that she was considered to be the most progressive United States senator, more than Bernie Sanders or I mean, even if you take Congress into account, than AOC or anybody like that. She was considered to be the most progressive person in Congress. You're going to miss all that. If you're not on Twitter, you might even totally forget that Kamala Harris is currently the vice president. So what's going to happen in the next 30 days? It's going to be a further and more overt version of what we've seen for the last 70 since Kamala Harris took up or forcefully committed a coup d'etat over the largest political party in the country. Without a single, and that was another thing with the debate. A quick aside that I had a problem with is that they wanted to talk about an attack on democracy. What about the fact that Kamala Harris became the presidential candidate for the largest party in the country, known as the Democrat Party, which has the root in the word democracy, which America is not, by the way. We're a constitutional republic, but They are the party that advocates for democracy, and Kamala Harris became their candidate without a single Democratic vote being made for her.
Yeah.
Nobody going to talk about that? You want to talk about a threat to democracy? Let's talk about
January
that.
6th. That's all they want to talk about.
Nobody else wanted to bring that up. And so in the next 30-some days, we're going to see Kamala avoiding real questions, avoiding having anything to do with the Biden-era presidency, ignoring the last 4 years, blaming it all somehow on Trump, and running as if she's the, quote, new way forward when we've got, what have we had for the last 4 years? Was that not a new way?
Yeah.
No, they're going to they're going to keep the message of Roe v. Wade was terrible. Abortion should be unleashed, and January 6th is the worst thing since Civil War. They want to keep talking about the things that weren't that big a deal as we go along, and conservatives and Republicans have to get that message back behind them. January 6th, yes, a few hundred people did some stupid things, trespass and broken in the windows and whatever, but that's 4 years ago. And was there questionable things that happened during 2020 election? Absolutely. Was there enough voter fraud to suggest that something could have been changed? I don't think we'll ever know. Some things happened in several states that were nefarious, and we'll find that out probably 10 years from now. But right now, the message is you can't afford anything right now in this economy. Right. And crime is up. It is not down. Illegal immigration is up. It's not down. And now we have a major natural disaster on the East Coast happening, and American lives are being lost daily, and FEMA is nowhere to be found because they prioritized DEI and equity over American lives. So your choice for election and who you're voting for is pretty simple. You're voting for America First policies and not someone that can't figure out where North Carolina is.
Well, interesting. Go ahead. Well, hold on real quick, Kevin, because it's interesting. James Carville, who, like him or dislike him, obviously he's a political operative for the Democrat Party, has been longstanding. He's mentioned it over and over again. When you said something about seeing the commercials, I'm just flipping the channel, or if I'm watching and a Kamala commercial comes on. I have watched a couple of them. But James Carville said, it's dangerous waters. You better be leaving the football piece alone. Some men just like to sit around and watch football without politics. And ultimately, Kamala, you constantly are reminding them about the economy because you're never talking about the economy. Or if you do talk about the economy, you're only telling us what you have solidified and fortified through your time in the Biden-Harris Biden administration. Go ahead, Kevin. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of people when they watch football, like you said, that's their moment on Sunday to let go of everything, the world that's burning around them. Yep. And enjoy something. And that's why even the NFL, they'll still have things on the field and certain things about the end racism crap and stuff like that. But it's not nearly as overt. They're not necessarily running advertisements about it. They're not making it a vital part of their games. At best, they're doing the little black national anthem bull crap that they've been doing, that they've done in the past. But overall, they've really backed off from it because they noticed that their viewership was plummeting. And so they were like, okay, let's just stop it. And so I think you're right on that aspect. I do think that it's a little bit more nuanced than what Ryan was saying in the idea that it's, well, you have an America First candidate. I do think that Trump is much more America First, but let's also be honest. He has backed off on some of the more conservative issues when it comes to the issue of abortion. While it's politically expedient and will likely be efficient, and
I think we talked about that before.
And help win the election. We as conservatives, obviously, a vote for Trump is a much better vote. It's better than wasting your vote on trying to go for Bobby Kennedy if you're in a state that he's still on the ballot. They weren't able to get him off. Right. It's better than doing a write-in candidate or anything like that. It's much better than any other option possible. But if you're investing in the future, you have to also recognize the value of your investment. Trump is a great investment, high value stock right now for the country. But it also means that we should not be. We need to remind ourselves that we shouldn't that's a short-term investment, that we need higher stakes investment for the future. So when you look at your state and local candidates, sure, maybe sacrifice the issue of abortion right now at the highest federal executive office level, but make sure you're holding the rest of your politicians to account, because Trump is one term. Your senator, your congressman, your state senator, your state representative, your mayor, your councilman, anything like that, they have the opportunity to likely be in office much longer. And so make sure you're not sacrificing the investment on that.
And you've hit upon the point that I want to make for the rest of the show. 2 points. There is one thing that J.D. Vance talked about more than anything, and he really tried to get Tim Walz to bite on it, because it's kind of what we base the show off today, and that's censorship. But before we move on to censorship, look at the succession plan. So when you say, what are you voting for? You're not voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for Elon Musk. You're voting for Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy. You're voting for J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis. When you look at the team, the succession plan that Trump has behind him versus the Democrat, let's compare. Let's do a little comparison. You've got Kathy Hochul, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker. Who else is one of their golden childs on the left?
Mayor Pete.
I mean, what's that? Oh, yeah.
Mayor Pete.
Don't forget about the guy who only ran South Bend, Indiana, and ran it into the ground. But don't worry, he can be the next president of the United States. But, I mean, that's what we're up against, is they know that they don't have a page, turn the page. They got to turn the page. Actually, what they need to do is throw the book out, because they can't go forward. Because where do they go? Back to the last 3.5 years, and even beyond the last 3.5 years. This has been something that's been systematic for the last 60 years. And now it's reached the pinnacle. And what they have found out, just like they are in Europe, multiculturalism doesn't work. It doesn't unify people. In fact, it does the opposite. It divides people. It puts us in a situation that we're currently in. And in order to get multiculturalism, you wanted to, quote, air quotes here, import all these people. This is what really is on the ballot. The future of our country. Who do you want leading the country? Vivek Ramaswamy? Elon Musk? Tulsi Gabbard? Robert F. Kennedy? Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance. I mean, these Wesley Hunt, Byron Donalds. I mean, they don't have the bench that has been built. And you know, Kevin, I talk about this often, and Ryan, both of you, because you're part of what I believe is the bench in Central Illinois and beyond, Bloomington, Normal and beyond, is young people like yourselves. Kat Peterson, it's good to know that Kat's in the chat. Chatty Cat, Ty Smith, Josh Bender, Paul Garcia. I mean, the list that's there, a lot. You guys are the generation, actually, of future leaders. So you're beyond the Elon Musk, because you take over trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. So we don't even know what that looks like, because obviously, I want to do a commercial real quick for the Trump Bitcoin. I think I'm going to jump on board with that. What do you think?
I don't know.
That was a long-winded answer to get you. We have a succession plan, Kevin. I mean, you were a DeSantis guy. I mean, J.D. Vance. I mean, you look at the future of the Republican Party right now, and it's looking awful bright.
I was so happy with J.D. Vance as a VP pick, and I know this has become an evolving discussion, but I know when J.D. Vance was first announced, it was weird to me. You had all these Republicans that came out and they were like, that guy, that was not a good pick. He should have chose a woman. He should have chose a black woman. He should have chose a black guy, anything like that. And I'm like, whoa. So I've been hearing, since I got into politics, I was hearing that we don't want this identity politics. We don't want people to be chosen based on their skin color, on their gender. We want people to be chosen based on their merit.
Right.
Okay, so we don't want to talk about. I see David might have gotten disconnected, but I'll keep going here.
Yeah,
if you guys can still hear me.
Yep, it's still on.
What about the guy who grew up with a mom who's addicted to drugs, was raised by his grandmother who was living paycheck to paycheck, refused welfare because of dignity as much as she could, and worked his way up to being the editor of Law Review, getting a law degree from Yale Law School.
Yeah.
Wrote a best-selling memoir that got turned into a Netflix documentary, hit #1 on Netflix, and then ran for Senate, won his first time in 2022, and 2 years later becomes a VP contender. You want to talk about merit? There's a guy with merit. Sure, maybe he's a straight white guy that's a little weird. Have you ever met anybody in law school? Have you ever met me? I'm a little weird. Anybody who wants to be you meet who wants to be a lawyer is a little weird. And so I was so tired of hearing people saying, "Oh, well, that wasn't his best pick." No, he absolutely was.
No, that was by far his best. Yeah,
with the best merit, he had the most merit to become a vice presidential nominee. And so I will defend JD Vance. I think he was the best person, and I'm honestly Vance 2028, and I have been since he was announced as a VP contender, because JD Vance is young. He is obviously highly intelligent, and he deserves it. He is a merit. He has shown he has the merit to do it, and so I honestly, I'm.
Can you imagine the debates between DeSantis and JD during the primaries?
I think really it'd be fascinating. That's assuming DeSantis even runs. I think JD Vance. I think DeSantis's time was this last election cycle. That's why I think he should have run. I don't know how relevant it'll be to see it'll be interesting to see what he does following his governorship. Because I think he expires after this next term.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think JD Vance has changed the outlook or look on how the importance of the VP is based on the debate performance? I mean, it's still yet to be determined what he's going to do, but has he kind of changed that relevance of the VP based on how he did so far? Or is it still too early?
So the relevance of the VP never really has the only time in my lifetime, at least that I know of, that a VP has drastically changed something has been Dick Cheney under Bush, and that was because of his exercise of what is called the unitary executive theory, which is this idea that if you're within the executive branch, anybody, if they have the right coalition within the executive branch, can ultimately exercise the power of the president from their office. So, and that's what Dick Cheney essentially tried to do. That's why he was able to. That's why he even gave authority to shoot any plane down on site on 9/11, unless otherwise directed.
That's where I thought you were going to go with this. The only thing that Dick Cheney brought to the vice presidency was that everybody knows that you don't want to go on with the guy. You talk about shooting.
Yeah.
Don't stand near Dick Cheney with the shotgun. Is what I believe that he really.
But what I'm saying is that the vice presidency can be generally known as an F-off position. Where you're a figurehead, you're nominal, unless you decide to, unless you have a stupid president,
right?
Which is kind of what we had with W. We had somebody who he didn't really do much on his own. He did what everybody around him said to do, and so that's what Cheney did. Is he was able to control the presidency. So do I think that J.D. Vance does much? I think that he wins over some people, maybe enough to win over some parts of the Midwest and Appalachia. Maybe he does enough to win over Wisconsin. Heck, maybe Minnesota is even a winnable state against Tim Walz. Who knows? It's potential. We'll see really once he gets into office what JD Vance does as the vice president. I believe they're going to win. Maybe I'm being too presumptuous, but I believe we'll see once he gets into office how he could change the role of the vice president. All we know is that Kamala has shown that you can be the vice president and not the vice president simultaneously. So
setting the bar low.
Before we get to the main issue that JD Vance really tried to pin Tim Walz down on, the censorship and the doing away with the First Amendment. Obviously, there's plenty of scuttlebutt out there, from Hillary to John Kerry, basically saying, "Wow, I don't know if it's." But one last point, I think that I think needs to be brought out today in regards to everything that currently is going on and where we're going. Will we win and secure the presidency? I believe, like you just said, Kevin, and I know Ryan believes this, I believe that we are going to win. I believe that there has been enough momentum to get beyond that margin of fraud, which is about 1% to 1.5%. And when I talk about fraud, this is they always want to talk about mass fraud. No, there wasn't mass fraud in 2020. There didn't have to be mass fraud because, as you just pointed out, you just have to move a couple bellwether counties, and those counties move electoral votes. We still are a nation that decides our elections based on the Electoral College. I am thankful to God for that because, once again, I think it's tried and true and proven that if you just allowed it to be the popular vote, there's no way. I think that there's just too many ways that open that up to additional fraud beyond all the methods that they do. I did have a point in there, and I have to tell you, because I am driving here on the DPB show, I lost my point, but I'm glad that I got at least to the Electoral College. Let's talk about censorship. That was a big part of the debate. What says you about that, Kevin Phares?
About censorship, man, it's such a big topic to discuss the idea of censorship. And this was one thing that I was getting really mad about. Actually, a lot of people in law were getting mad about is the fire in a crowded theater thing. If you actually look into that case, the fire in a crowded theater. That's what. It's what everybody always says about the First Amendment. You're not allowed to say fire in a crowded theater. You're not allowed to say fire in a crowded theater. Well, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to say climate change in. and if the world's going to end in 10 years, you want to talk about inciting panic, because that's what the whole fire in a crowded theater is, inciting panic. Looking at that case, I believe it's called Sherman, the Sherman case. I got to double check my notes somewhere on that one, but and how that actually panned out. It's really interesting. We don't have enough time to go into it right now, but but Tim Walz doesn't actually understand the idea. He wanted to bring up the banned books thing, which is another nuanced case. The idea of censorship is so fascinating because conservatives will get really on it about social media. And the issue of censorship in terms of social media is, now, do I support the idea of public entities to be able to do what they want? Absolutely. Private entities, not public. Private entities, social media companies, be able to do what they want? Absolutely. Unless it is doing what they want because of government pressure, which is what we've learned is that the Biden White House, actually, that's where the First Amendment and censorship comes in. A lot of times it gets reduced, even in conservative circles, as, I hate Zuckerberg and he's violating the First Amendment. No, Zuckerberg can't violate the First Amendment. The First Amendment is to say Congress shall make no law. Congress shall pass no law. The First Amendment and all the amendments in our Bill of Rights are actually that to protect us from the government. And so Facebook can tell you that you're committing hate speech all they want. Can you think it's an unfair rule? Absolutely. But if they're doing it because the government says they have to, that's when, or because the government is using coercive power, which is what the Biden White House is currently being accused of, then yes, that's the issue. That's where it becomes a First Amendment violation. And it's a nuanced issue that even conservatives, I think, misrepresent. Liberals misrepresent it by just saying, you're spreading misinformation, so you shouldn't be allowed to talk in the first place. Okay, that's censorship. Well, I mean, but conservatives don't come out and be like, we hate Facebook. No. What you hate is Congress. Yeah. And it's you and everybody else. So
the example about the huge government hammer on censorship is no look further than Alex Jones and what has happened to him. Yes, what he said about Sandy Hook thing was terrible, but he apologized, and to have a $1 billion lawsuit of defamation slapped against you for simply having some opinion, either albeit damaging to maybe certain aspect of their lives as victims. I get that part of it, but as in law and legal expert, if you're going to be going that way, what ramification does it have when you can sit there and even if you're lying about something, like even the election thing, you can't hammer somebody criminally for having an opinion, even if it's false. So
Man,
what's
okay.
your take on the Alex Jones thing and the fact that how hard they came after him?
So the
Was
thing
I mean,
is
there was
that,
more to it than just saying Sandy Hook is a hoax or
yeah.
whatever.
So I need to read a little. So I've started to read a little bit about the Alex Jones things. I'll admit I've had a lot of other cases, but to read about that aren't necessarily directly related to that one. But I started reading about the Sandy Hook case with Alex Jones. The issue with that one is how much, because part of what they charged him with, I believe, was a certain level of negligence, which is a civil tort. And a lot of what he's being asked to pay for is based on punitive damages. And the difficulty with it is I actually believe that there is to some level a good argument that he did act negligently in his claim that did cause a certain level of harm. I've looked into it a little bit of it, but the difficulty that you get to is as to what level the harm caused with his negligent claim. And was it $1 billion worth? Is he the sole person? That's the other thing too, is he's basically been called the sole person responsible for the damage that has been caused to some of these families due to, because there was people that stalked them, threatened violence because of claims that they were a part of this huge government conspiracy. And that is not entirely on Alex Jones. There are other people that are, when I say conspiracy theorists, I mean that in more of the traditional term, rather than what it's been turned into. There are other conspiracy theorists, people that theorized in a conspiracy of this idea that Sandy Hook was fake, that caused that damage. And so, in terms of your question as to, it's one that I can't. Sorry, it's not one that I can 100%.
Oh yeah, no. I just wanted your take on it.
But it's a question of, is our legal system accurately putting the damage to those that are responsible for it, or are they being reactionary to a emotional,
more political,
emotional conversation?
Yeah.
And I think right now it's the latter. And so I think it's almost if they can satisfy the beast that is those mad about Alex Jones through this action, then they will sacrifice true justice for that. Similarly to the Minneapolis, the George Floyd thing is, let's cut off the head of the beast by using the sacrificial lamb that is Derek Chauvin, instead of actually doing justice.
Yeah,
that's what I'd say about it.
Well, and there's so much more. There's so much more to that. I mean, it's beyond the censorship. It's beyond, the Peter Navarro. You've got Steve Bannon. I mean, you've got true political prisoners where what one party deems as illegal, the other party's like, wait a minute. The Constitution protects this. Well, I'm sorry, we don't necessarily agree with the Constitution, so we're going to find a way to circumvent it. This has been a lively discussion today. Probably one of the best DPP shows, but I always say this because we have Kevin Phares on the show, and Kevin is one of the bright, shining,
one of the best
stars, one of the best. I knew it coming out of the gate. I appreciate Kevin because he's so determined to get at the truth, and that's what we talked about today. We talk about the truth rather than a truth. Kevin, I started doing something, and I know that you haven't had the time because you've been reading so much and studying and doing what you should be doing, that I started about 4 weeks ago, praying to start my shows and to ending in prayer. Now, today I was super excited. I'm on the road. This isn't sitting in my comfy studio, and it is much easier in the new DPB studio because you don't have cars flying around you as you're going down the road. And I think I've done a pretty good job of keeping both hands on the wheel and my eyes on my road. Now, thankfully, Mrs. Producer has had to point to the windshield a couple times for me because I got a little excited. I wanted to listen with my eyes rather than my ears. But I want to definitely have you back on, if time allows, Kevin, somewhere
Absolutely.
closer to the election, because I think you just bring such a unique perspective. Kevin, I think the audience needs to know, when will you celebrate? You'll be 23 this next birthday, right?
I'll be 24. I was born in the year 2000, so I'll be 24 on Christmas Eve. It's actually my golden birthday this year.
Nice.
Well, that says a lot, to have a younger person like yourself, who you are light years ahead of me when it comes to the intellect part of it, and it's always good to find people who are so passionate about understanding this. Ryan, obviously, he just decided one day to create the Ryan Mac Show, and you were there, Kevin, for that. And
Yeah.
so to see this continuation, I'm so thankful in my heart that God has surrounded me with people like you, Ryan, and Kevin, and Kat, and all the above, because this is truly what life's about: God, family, and friends, and then our country. And I think we try to do something different with the DPB show, Speechless, and the Ryan Mac Show. We want to inform people. No, we don't have all the answers. We don't profess to have all the answers. But we know one thing: if you're going to turn on mainstream media, and no, I'm not a big follower of Fox. I catch Fox News on clips, via social media. That's about my viewing of Fox News. Now, I do love me a little Peter Ducey in the Situation Room.
Oh, great job.
Yeah.
Because Peter can break it down. But this Peter Ducey's another succession plan when you look at the people who are coming up. So I don't want to take any more of your time. I promised you that I know you've got to get back to studying and doing the things you do at Liberty University. I still appreciate it. Would you join me in prayer before we end the show?
Absolutely.
And of course, we're going to stay on for a minute after we end the stream, because I want to just formally thank you, Kevin. So let's go ahead and end prayer. And I always do that with removing the old cap, because I think it's important to reveal my wonderful bald head. Now, and I can't close my eyes because I know I'll get in trouble for doing that. I'll still keep my eyes open. Dear eternal and gracious Father, we just thank you for this day. Our Father, you are in heaven, and we know that all of this that surrounds us, all that we talk about day in, day out, is it's just a mere drop in the bucket of the foundation that you've laid. As Kevin talked about in Numbers, I mean, you have predestined everything. Yes, you gave us the ability to have free will and to make choices, but you also gave us the ability to dig deep within Scripture, within the Word of God, for the truth. You've told us that if we seek the truth, that the truth will set us free. Lord, let us be instruments of your peace, like J.D. Vance was the other night. What a demonstration of a godly man living out the gospel message. He did not have to attack Tim Walz. He didn't have to attack the moderators. There was a confidence. And Lord, I know that confidence is definitely from you. He has spoken of it, he's demonstrated it, and he lives it. We're thankful for everyone who is willing to take up the sword, the helmet, the belt, the shoes of peace, and to walk out in this world today where they're conflicted and they're confronted by the evilness that can truly try to ruin souls. But we know one truth is there, and that is Jesus Christ died, he rose again, and was resurrected from the dead to live in heaven until he returns again. And we know that that day will come because why? He said it would. He said he went to prepare a place for all of us. And we know that he lives by his word. And we're thankful for that. Lord, thank you again for this show today. Thank you for just bringing these guys together. I get my little heart just beats a little quicker. My mind races a little more, but it's so good to know that you have other people that are going to continue to carry the torch here on this earth. We pray all these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Well, as I always on the show, I love to say it. Kevin, thank you. Ryan, thank you.
May I add something? May I add something to the prayer just very briefly?
Go ahead.
I just want to. I want to say I want to pray for everybody. I know that we talk a lot about those that we disagree with on this show, on all of our shows as well. I know that we oftentimes see others in the world as in some way the enemy. Or something, but there truly is only one enemy out there. And if you are not saved, then there are those that are out there that are simply looking for a savior. And so as we go into a very, very contentious election cycle, please remember that while maybe half the country might disagree with us, they might be advocating for something the enemy also advocates for. They are simply also people in search of a savior. And it is our duty as followers of Christ to help and continuously pray that they at some point find him. And so it is important, as David said earlier, not to dehumanize, but to recognize that this does not mean to stand down or to take a knee by any means, but to lift those up, lift up the hearts even more of those that are in search of that Savior. So please, Lord, please help them find him just as much as we have.
You know what? That's what I said. That's why we have him, Ryan. He does a better job of wrapping it up than the host does. And Kevin, you said it best. We are truly here to be instruments of Christ's peace on earth, and we need to be mindful of that. So, thank you for definitely making that point, because we need to be aware of that. Ryan, I always tell our audience, Kevin, I know that you love our audience and people that tune in. I know Ryan does. I love them. But ultimately, guys, no one loves those who will hear this message more than Jesus Christ. Hey, until we see you next Tuesday, I want to bid you all a farewell. Don't forget, guys, hang around because I want to talk to you for a second.
Absolutely. Thank you.